Welcome to Finance in 5 and to part 2 of this little mini-series about the Great Reset. So you can probably see from this thumbnail of these four gentlemen who have put out some fairly popular YouTube videos recently about the Great Reset. It's interesting from their expressions to note the gut-level consensus emotional response to what the World Economic Forum proposes. In part 1 we gave you a little bit of an overview which wasn't exactly positive about the overall objectives. However, nothing that was stated in that video is different from the admitted plan of the World Economic Forum. It's strange in a lot of ways, because would you really think that the abolition of private property, massive tax hikes or permanent job losses would make anybody unhappy? I don't know. In this video what we're going to look at are 7 predictions arising from the Great Reset. Hope you enjoy, and by all means like, comment and subscribe. All the best.
So imagine my surprise at exactly 12:30 p.m. on Sunday the 18th of October 2020 when I get this email from YouTube. Let me just read this email out to you right now. And the title is, Neil McCoy Ward, your content violated YouTube's community guidelines and has been removed, which I found very unusual. And it said the Great Reset explained breaches YouTube terms and conditions, and that how this affects your channel. Because it's the first time that I've created some offensive material, I get a warning. But if it happens again, I will get a strike and I won't be allowed to post for a week. So that is my side of the story as what's happened. I actually couldn't believe that had happened. So straight away I made a legal appeal and I wrote a very long documented email to YouTube. I went through all of their terms and conditions and I basically said to them, please let me know how I have breached your terms and conditions, because I cannot see anything anywhere to prove or to show that I have breached the terms and conditions of YouTube. Fast forward a very short time and YouTube then accepts my appeal and says, okay, well, you know, we're going to put your video back online, but you have to be over 18 to watch it. And there has to be another disclaimer so that anybody who goes onto the video and wants to watch it has to click that disclaimer to say they understand that some of the content may be extreme. Now, again, I don't see anything in the video anywhere that could be extreme. The only thing I can think of is, like I mentioned, a helicopter firing a rocket. We see this on morning news when kids are getting ready for school. I was just saying this from a journalistic approach. This is what has been going on. This is the plan. It's, you know, they say hidden in plain sight. This isn't even hidden, this Great Reset 2021. It is available everywhere. It's even in the news media where they're showing this Great Reset that's going to happen next year. And if you haven't watched my video, it is on my channel. You can watch it. It's very, very carefully disguised as a banned video. And it says, you know, this content violates YouTube's terms and conditions and all this sort of stuff. But if you look below, there is a button you can click to say that you accept that or you confirm and you're happy to take the risk to watch the video. I would highly recommend you watch the video. Unfortunately, there is no option to share that video. I can't even share it with you. I can't even make a comment or put it in the description, the link, the shareable link. So there's no way that you can share it. It doesn't even appear on YouTube search or Google search or anything like that. So really the only way you can watch it is to go to my videos tab and go to that video and watch it from there. So overall, I don't feel I did anything wrong with the video. You should watch it yourself, and so that you can actually educate yourself on what is going on. You know, there's a lot of very unusual things, let's say, because I don't want to get in trouble again with this video. But all I'm going to say is a lot of unusual things going on right now. And those predictions I've been making back as far as April. If you remember in April, or it might have been May time, I said, this is the plan, this is how it's going to progress. If you do the research that I've done, go on the World Economic Forum website and start reading all those documents and their timeline, you'll see that there's certain things that are just not a coincidence that are going on right now. Be very careful, do your own research, and that's all I've got to say on it.
We're at a stage here that government is completely collapsing. You know, I've been warning people that socialism is collapsing, and they all know, no, it's capitalism. And no, it's socialism. because they can't afford the pension funds, they can't afford all the social benefits that they have promised, and continue to borrow without ever repaying anybody. So that's what's coming to an end. So the only way to keep those socialistic programs going is basically adopting this modern monetary theory where they're just not going to issue debt anymore. They're just going to print money.
Housing prices pretty much globally right now are at all-time highs. In the United States, we're at an all-time high today. In the United Kingdom, we're at all-time highs, as well as many other Western nations. And this should be the first point of concern for you today. I know the media and a lot of other outlets are saying this is fantastic news. Ladies and gentlemen, this is great news. You should be so excited. Rush out and buy a house. Buy a new home, buy an investment property, I know all this is coming out. This is actually the polar opposite of what you should do. And in fact, Benjamin Graham was one of the greatest investors and teachers of investing of all time. And of course, his protege is Warren Buffett, who many of you will know. And it's quite clear that when you have a peak in prices, all-time high of prices, there's really only one way that housing prices or any equity prices can go over the long run, and that is down. So have I changed my opinion on where house prices are going in the future? Absolutely not. I do believe they're going to crash and come down. Nothing has changed there.
Okay, so forget the whole market, the whole country. Let's just look at New York. So while New York City is crashing, Buffalo, New York, is seeing a huge net inflow. As a matter of fact, it saw an increase of 107% gain. Now, many residents of the expensive cities like New York, Los Angeles, big cities like that, San Francisco, who can't afford to rent and to save for a home at the same time, they're leaving, right? And they're looking to buy homes in much more affordable places like Louisville or Little Rock. Now, per Redfin, a big real estate website, Redfin's top 10 destinations include El Paso, Texas, Burlington, Vermont, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Tulsa even has a program. It's called Tulsa Remote, and they're actually paying people to move to the city and work remotely. So if you can now work remotely, you're looking for a cheap place to live, Tulsa will pay you to move there and work. Now, most of the destination cities have relatively low housing costs compared to the larger metropolitan areas that people are leaving. So if you're looking at the larger state picture, Florida appears to be the biggest recipient of people fleeing New York.
But I really want to get into the data today with you to actually show you what's happening now and where we are seeing some cities turning around, and not necessarily turning around yet in terms of downward pricing. But what we are seeing are these indicators that impact when house prices start to come down. And of course, the obvious ones that many of you will know are interest rates. They are historically low and they don't look to be increasing anytime soon. So interest rates will not help to push prices down. Quite the opposite. They'll actually help to lift prices, and that is why we are seeing these large price rises combined with low inventory. Well, let's move on to the forbearance data now then, which is very key for this process. And this is from the Mortgage Bankers Association, and the headline is share of mortgage loans in forbearance decreases to 5.67%. I'm not sure why that's such a positive thing, because I think, and again, I want to just clarify something here. A lot of the media outlets, not saying this organization here, but a lot of the media outlets don't understand, they don't do the research on forbearance and what this actually means. So the decrease, I don't think is the way they're explaining it. And let me take a step back to actually go through this. Forbearance began on the 18th of March, 2020. It is a 6-month initial period. So that takes you to the 18th of September 2020. That is what's known as phase 1, so period 1. Period 2, of course, then starts 18th September and goes through to March of 2021. What a lot of people don't realize is that forbearance, once you reach the end of that 6-month period, the lender will contact you and say, do you want to go into period 2, phase 2? If you don't respond, you don't automatically get enrolled into phase 2. Okay, that's quite crucial, very important data. And that is what I think is happening and why we're seeing this decrease rate to some extent. Of course, we're now seeing a lot more. So if we look at the stats and the data, only 25% of these mortgages that are in forbearance are in phase 1 now. 75% are now in phase 2. That is huge. This is nothing like what was expected. What was expected was people would go through phase 1, and as they got to the end of phase 1, they would drop out, they would make the payment, and that would be it. But no, 75% are now in phase 2. This is pretty serious business, because you've got to think of this like a wave. What's happened is like this now, and we're about to come, as we go to March 2021, to the end of phase 2. Now, you've got to do the logic here. Again, I don't understand why so many YouTubers are saying this at the end of March, people will pay the money and everything will be fine because they'll have their jobs back, etc. Let's just run through this logically. You at home, let's pretend that your mortgage payment is $1,000 and you've lost your job, so you're no longer able to work, so you can't continue to work, earn money to pay your $1,000. If you can't pay $1,000 now, how on earth are you going to pay $6,000 to $12,000 when your forbearance period ends in 6 to 12 months? How is that even possible? There's just no possible way. So what you could do potentially is refinance or try and get another better deal, something like that. But who's going to lend money to you if you haven't got a job? So again, people keep saying, again, mainly these California type of YouTubers and housing market guys, oh yeah, you can refinance, you can do this at the end. No, this is absolute nonsense. You are not going to be able to refinance at the end. It's not going to happen because you haven't got a job. There's no way that you can pay the money back. No one's going to lend money to you if you don't have a job.
A long-term debt cycle is normally associated with currency devaluation. And so basically debts get so high that policymakers can't deleverage them without the system collapsing. And so usually you have a rapid expansion in the money supply, and you basically devalue currency so that you take away some of those debts in real terms, but not nominal terms. And that's historically what we've seen, and it's already kind of playing out that way in this cycle as well. I think the key turning point for inflation is when you start to get, instead of oversupply, you start to get a tighter supply-demand balance. And I think as you look out a couple years ahead, so after we have this winter period where shutdowns are happening again, and there's not exactly a ton of demand at the moment. But I think as you look out into late 2021 and in 2022, you start to get a big rebound in commodity consumption after already having pretty significant supply cuts, especially in energy. And so I think that's where you can get more inflation. And then from there, the key risk is that unlike the 70s, the Federal Reserve won't be able to raise interest rates to keep inflation in check, and that's because sovereign debt is so high that would cause a fiscal crisis. And so in that way, it looks a lot more like the 1940s, where even though inflation at times reached the double digits, the Federal Reserve basically capped treasury yields by being willing to print money and buy them to peg them. And so, but because the market always wants to express itself, like the Fed can't control the market, it can only redirect the market. It's like you can't stop a river, you can change the flow of the river. And so when they cap yields, if they get to that point, then it shows up in currency devaluation instead. So, it's relative to other currencies, or because many countries are doing it more broadly, it's a devaluation of currency relative to hard assets such as commodities, such as real estate, things like that.
Under President Biden's plan, people earning over $400,000 a year would pay combined federal and state income taxes of over 62%.
On the federal side, there are two basic increases that Biden is proposing. The first is a top rate going from 37 to 39.6%. And then you've got the payroll tax of 12.4% applying to income over $400,000. So half of that payroll tax is paid by employers. So you add those two changes together and you get a new top federal rate of 45.8%. Then you add the net investment income tax and other provisions, and you get a total top rate of 49.6%. So let's go to the state side on top of that. If you live in California, that combined rate would go to 62.6%. New Jersey would be over 60%. New York State would jump to 58%. Not too bad, but New York City residents would see a combined state and federal rate of just over 62%. Now, with tax increases being proposed both In New York and California, those rates would likely go even higher.
The UK does not have low taxes for capital gains or for the different elements that he was mentioning, particularly on the pension side. What it needs to do is to incentivize investment and saving. Those two things will help the recovery. The way to do it is not increasing taxes, but controlling spending, obviously.
Police in the Netherlands arrested at least 70 people on Monday after riots broke out across the country for a third night in a row. In Rotterdam, anti-lockdown demonstrators started fires and clashed with police in protest of a new nighttime curfew. There were similar scenes in Amsterdam, as well as the smaller centres of Haarlem-Gielen and Den Bosch. The 9 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. curfew came into force on Saturday evening to curb the spread of coronavirus. It's the country's first nationwide curfew since World War II. Many say it's not necessary as cases of COVID-19 are falling in the Netherlands, with the lowest number of new infections reported on Monday since December the 1st. But the government is worried about a highly contagious UK variant of the disease spreading. The unrest started over the weekend when protesters in several cities looted stores, started fires and clashed with law enforcement. In one case, knives were thrown at police and a COVID-19 testing station was burned down. The events resulted in 240 arrests, and thousands of fines were handed out for defying the curfew. Earlier on Monday, Prime Minister Mark Rutte condemned what he called the criminal violence of the weekend.
What we saw has nothing to do with fighting for freedom. We didn't take all these measures for fun. We did so because we are fighting against the virus, and it's the virus which is actually robbing our freedom.
What does that mean for gold and silver? I know you're not a big proponent of it, but you have to consider it. I mean, if you're going to get to this kind of a situation, what do you think?
I still think that, you want like silver coins, like the quarters and stuff like that. My only concern about the gold is that these people are ruthless. They've already been tracking gold. It's taxed, for example, in France. I know people that, my friends there, they have it. They buy gold and they ship it to Belgium just to prevent the taxes on it. They're tracking virtually everybody that produces gold, period. So it's kind of also like the cryptocurrencies. I mean, do you really think if these people are doing what they're doing with the elections and they're going to default and all this stuff, do you really think they're going to try and allow people to have any alternative? They're going after, cryptocurrencies. They're going after gold in the sense that you can't travel with it anymore. There was a woman that came from Canada down to San Francisco, and she had $30,000 in gold, and they confiscated it from her. So, there was even a guy from Tampa that flew internally, not internationally, and he had a couple $100,000 in cash on him to go buy some tractors, and they confiscated that. They're just into whatever you have, let's just seize it. And you got to be careful about that. So with gold, yes, I think it's going to go up. It will be a store of wealth for this type of crisis. It's a collapse in confidence in government that is necessary to make it rise. But be careful. Do not store it in a bank. Do not store it in any storage facility. Maybe you got to dig a hole in the back, in the backyard. But because if you look at 1930, when Roosevelt confiscated gold, if you had gold on deposit in a bank, it was gone. They did not come down and knock on every door and ask you, hey, you got any gold? Turn it over. That they didn't do. So we have to understand that this is what we're looking at this stage in the game. So they would not be someone who would be really looking at anything on the side of, I would say, ethics or anything like that. So just be mindful that if you had it in a storage facility, they know where those are. And they may do the same thing they did in the 30s. Hey, that's all ours.
You like gold. You don't like the vicious assault against it by the people who are doing the crap to us now.
Right. I mean, that's my concern.
Got it.
All right.
Not gold. You're not concerned about gold. You're concerned about the people that will steal your gold.
Yes. I mean, I'm just saying you've got to be careful where you store this stuff at. For right now, the other thing that will probably still survive will be the equity side. And if you noticed in this last little rally, suddenly the Dow made a new high and the NASDAQ declined. It's a little bit more than Bezos selling off $3 billion of his own stock. They basically were looking at this, and when the Dow goes up, that's international capital starting to park. So if you can't trust the banks, you can't trust the government debt, where are you going to put the money?
Stocks.
And the best thing, you can put it in some, stocks and at least travel with it. So far, I mean, that maybe diamonds you can, that won't be picked up by one of these X-ray machines. But I mean, I think that other than that, and we're just getting into this situation where it is a war against us, period. Biden said he will rejoin the UN. That is exactly what they want, all right? If you look at Schwab, U.S. will no longer be a superpower, all right? It will be shared among nations coming out of the UN. And he's got this right in the video. I mean, Soros has been anti-American for a long time.